In this video, we're going to look at the histology of the alimentary canal. And we know how many organs are in the alimentary canal. We went through them, starting at the mouth all the way to the anus. And as we travel through the alimentary canal, we'll find that our digestive organs have the same 4 basic layers, or tunics, that we call them. Some of these layers might be slightly different depending on the organ we're in, but they have this basic structure to them. We can see starting from the inside, there's the lumen. We have a mucosa. Then we have a submucosa in a lighter color here. Then we have a muscularis externa, lots of smooth muscle. And finally, on the outside, the serosa. So now our job is going to go through each of these 4 basic tunics or layers individually. So let's start with the mucosa and look at what it's made up of. So we're starting with the inner lining, or the mucosa, in the alimentary canal. Remember, we can be in the stomach, we can be in the intestines, esophagus, doesn't matter here. But the functions would be secrete mucus, it is a mucous membrane, to the interior, into the lumen. There's digestive enzymes in there to help break down food, and some hormones, which we'll go through as we go through this chapter. Absorption takes place when we're in the small intestine at the mucosa. It protects us against infectious disease. You might remember malt from a previous chapter. And just depending where we are in the alimentary canal, a particular region may perform just one of these, or all 3 of these. So the mucosa is made up of sublayers. Let's go through these 3 sublayers individually. So the innermost sublayer of the mucosa is the epithelium, which for the most part is simple columnar epithelium. They have mucus-secreting cells. We call some of those goblet cells to secrete mucus into the lumen, or on the surface of the epithelium. Areas that there is a different type of epithelium are areas where there's more friction from food rubbing against it, like the mouth and the esophagus, and then waste product at the anus. So in this area of the alimentary canal, we'll have stratified squamous epithelium instead for protection. So the mucus on the lining protects these organs from enzymes, so it doesn't eat away at the lining. It also helps food pass through more smoothly. The epithelium can secrete enzymes and hormones to aid in digestion. We're still in the mucosa now, but let's head to the next sublayer in this lighter color, which is the lamina propria. And a big function of the lamina propria is absorption. So there's a rich supply of capillaries, which you don't see here, but there are for absorption, especially when we're in the small intestine. It contains malt, recall from the immune system chapter, to help us defend against any microorganisms trying to enter our tissue from our alimentary canal. And then if we move outward or superficially from the lamina propria, we get to the outermost sublayer of the mucosa, and that's the muscularis mucosae, which we can see right here. And that's smooth muscle that produces local movements of the mucosa. Now we get to the second major layer of the alimentary canal, and it's called the submucosa. And you can see there's no sublayers of the submucosa. What's pictured here, we see blood vessels, we see lymphatic vessels. There's also lymphoid follicles to protect us against infection, and a nerve supply for our alimentary canal. There's elastic tissue in there as well, so when organs have to extend or stretch to accommodate foodstuff coming in, they also have that recoil ability to regain their shape as the material passes through. And then moving from the inside out, we get to the third major layer of our alimentary canal histology, and that's the muscularis externa. And you can see it's made up of 2 layers of muscle here, or muscles aligned in a different direction. You can see the inner layer of smooth muscle wraps around the lumen, or I should say the submucosa, in a circular pattern, where the outer layer of the muscularis externa, those cells run longitudinally, lengthwise, along the alimentary canal. So these two different sections of smooth muscle in the muscularis externa, we have the circular layer, which is the inner layer, and the longitudinal layer, which are going to work together to move food substances along. I should also mention here, circular layers can thicken in some areas, which we'll see as we move through the videos here, to form sphincters. So imagine this circular layer that thickens to become a much thicker muscle. Well, when that muscle constricts, it can totally block this lumen, not allowing material to pass through. And that's what a sphincter is. And then finally, we get to the fourth layer in the alimentary canal, histology, and that's called the serosa. So the serosa is really two sublayers in one. You have the inner connective tissue, which is areolar, and then the outer epithelial tissue, which we call the mesothelium, and that is just simple squamous epithelium. And mind you, this is general throughout the alimentary canal, what we're going through here. When we're in different organs, all of this can vary slightly from an organ to another organ in the alimentary canal, but this is the general overall structure. When we're talking about organs that are retroperitoneal, outside of the peritoneum and the abdominal cavity, they're going to have something called an adventitia, another layer on top of the serosa. In areas like the esophagus, since the esophagus is not in the abdominal cavity, it does not have peritoneum around it. Therefore, adventitia is the outer layer in that regard. So those are just slight differences depending on where we are located in the alimentary canal. But there we go. We went through our four major layers, or basic layers, of the alimentary canal, and each of the sublayers, well, submucosa did not have sublayers, but the other three did.